Okay. Welcome and good afternoon. This is Inga Houston with the Dublin Chamber of Commerce. We had some audio issues here. Sorry for the little bit of delay, but I'm glad you're all here to join us and hear from David Stark with BayEast Association of Realtors. He is going to give us an update on the Dublin residential real estate market. But first, our business roundtable is launching. This is our first one for the year, and it is a partnership between the Dublin Chamber and the City of Dublin. And we'd like to have a few words from Ms. Hazel Weatherford, Economic Development Director in the City of Dublin. Hazel.
Thank you, Inga. As Inga mentioned, my name is Hazel Weatherford. I'm the Economic Development Director for the City of Dublin. And the city always looks forward to partnering with the Chamber, especially on these business roundtable events, whereby we bring timely and informative topics to our business community. So thank you, Inga. I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Hazel. And, oh, I made you guys big, so now I can't see David's bio. I'll read his bio and introduce him. Mr. David Stark is the Public Affairs Director for the BayEast Association of Realtors. He helps community leaders, the media, and the public understand real estate issues and works to include the realtor perspective in the development of public policy. Prior to joining the BayEast staff in 2005, he worked for more than a dozen years managing housing and community development programs for cities in Southern and Northern California. David holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science and English for the University of California, Riverside. And he has a master's degree in city and regional planning from California Polytech University in San Luis Obispo, or SLO, as all my friends call it. And we want to know about what his wife thinks about the beard. Or maybe we can save that until after.
My wife is why I have this beard, okay? So that's the beginning and into the conversation right there.
There you go. Well, take it away.
Good afternoon. And if you could make me the host or allow me to share my screen, it'll make this presentation a lot better, because then you won't have to focus on all of this, and there'll be some nice charts and graphics to illustrate what I'm going to chat about. Full disclosure, and some of you may be going through this yourselves right now. Great, I've got the ability to share my screen, which I'll do in just a second. One of the reasons I'm using this ridiculous big recording microphone is that we are actually having some work done on our house, and the contractors are here, and they are making significant noise right now, which is fine. That's just part of what they have to do. So I got earphones in, I got the fancy broadcast mic, and I'll try to refrain from using my radio voice, although it's almost impossible for me to not use my radio voice when I've got this big condenser microphone here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come and share. This is one of the presentations I really look forward to every year, because Dublin is such a dynamic community, and so many things have happened on the housing front, and it's really fascinating things are happening. I really, really wish that we were in person, because what I get out of these presentations are the questions and answers that we have during the chat. So what I'll be doing is, while I do have about 93 slides I need to share, that's hilarious, is that I will be turning the slideshow on and off as we go, so we can have some of that interaction. Also, I do have a hard stop because I got another gig I got to get to, so I'll try to keep this under 90 minutes. I think that's how long you wanted me to go, 90 minutes. Also hilarious. So one thing that hasn't changed in all the things that happened during 2020 is my ridiculous sense of humor. So my apologies for that. So let's get to the slides and talk about what happened last year and what we're going to look out for in real estate this year. Now, if this is your first time experiencing one of these market update presentations, we're going to focus almost exclusively on the Tri-Valley and more specifically on Dublin, Pleasanton, and Livermore. And the reason that we're going to do that is because real estate markets are so diverse in the East Bay. We're not going to talk about the California real estate market. We're not going to talk about the Alameda County real estate market. We're going to talk about the Tri-Valley real estate markets because they really are very, very different. My data, all my information is coming from the multiple listing service. So it's based on actual transactions that happened. There's going to be some analysis that I'm using from the California Association of Realtors, but it's all coming from local data, not studies, not algorithms, not samples, but actual transactions. So to kick things off, there were three very distinct things that happened in Tri-Valley real estate during 2020. And some of them may actually surprise you given the context of everything else that happened during 2020. First, record-setting sales prices. And we're going to dig into why that happened and particularly why there were record-setting sales prices specifically in the Tri-Valley. Next, home sales volume was actually at a 5-year high. And this is surprising because, and Eng, I think someone just called in. I don't know if I can admit them or if you can admit them, me being the host, but I heard the little doorbell.
I let them in.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to ignore that doorbell unless it's the contractor who needs to talk to me. Again, the jokes don't get better. So yeah, sales volume actually at a high 5-year, which is a real surprise considering what happened in 2019 and the trends that we've been seeing over the years. So you actually beat home sales for the last. Sorry about that. Last thing is that the pace of sales was actually at a 5-year high in terms of, let me turn that around. Homes were on the market at a 5-year low. So not only did we sell a lot of units in Dublin last year, but they sold very quickly. And again, remarkable just considering everything that happened during 2020, specifically with COVID-19. So let's dig into the why of these three very surprising things. And again, just to emphasize, this is based on primarily on existing sales of units, not necessarily new homes, but existing homes in Dublin. So the big reason that these three things happened was working from home. And that's a 3-word expression, but it really explains everything that happened, particularly in the Tri-Valley last year. And I want to focus on that first word, work from home. And the reason I mention this is that there was so much attention given to the problems that we had in our economic sectors related to shelter in place and the impact that had on the economy. For better or worse for better, however you want to look at it, those impacts were not unique. If you take a look at job losses between February and April last year, and this is analysis provided by the California Association of Realtors, the vast majority of the job losses that were kicked in because of no COVID-19 happened in earning sectors that were less than $100,000. When you look at folks earning more than $100,000, it's only 12% of the total job losses. So I know that we've all heard, the concept of the K-shaped recovery, how the crisis didn't impact everyone equally. Well, when you take a look at incomes, it clearly didn't impact everyone equally. Now, I've got to be Machiavellian here for a second, and just I can't emphasize enough that we're very sensitive to folk that have been directly impacted by COVID-19, whether it's health impacts or economic impacts. That said, you can't understand what happened in home ownership and in residential real estate without, just looking as objectively and as clinically at these things as possible. So when I talk about the unequal impacts of COVID-19, it's not to downplay those impacts, but just to understand that it certainly wasn't equal. When we look at the other side of things in terms of how jobs have recovered during the second part, the last 3 quarters of 2020, there was recovery statewide. There were a couple big sectors in which jobs did come back. Finance and insurance, professionals, science, tech, the high-tech service industries, they were leading the job recovery. And what's notable here is that when you look at, where people are working that are buying homes in general in the San Francisco Bay Area, and in particular in the Tri-Valley, they're coming from the professional, science, high-tech areas. So when I make these statements about record-setting sales prices and record-setting sales activity and low days on market, it's because there were still people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but that people were still working during COVID-19. They were still making a good wage, and they still had the ability to purchase homes. And that's exactly what they did during 2020. So while there's been so much attention paid to the sectors that were hit hard by COVID-19, if you want to understand real estate, you've got to acknowledge that there were sectors that weren't necessarily hit by COVID-19. So that handles that work from home part of the equation. Let's talk about the home part of that equation, because you can't say work from home without home. And this is where the Tri-Valley is really, really unique in terms of how it's rebounded from COVID-19. We're going to start with the supply of homes for sale and look just at 2020 alone. So this is an aggregation of basically the 680 corridor up to about Alamo. And you can see that there was a little pause, a little pause in terms of when we hit peak inventory. In a normal year, we would have seen peak inventory March and April. That was pushed back a little bit as sellers were trying to figure out, what are we going to do with this whole crisis? When's it going to be over? And that pushed the whole real estate season much further into the year. And for the first time in a long time, we saw a second peak of inventory much, much later in the year in September. Now, typically, things would be slowing down in terms of real estate as we get out of the summer and into the fall and when kids would be going back to school. And that didn't necessarily happen throughout the Tri-Valley. And looking specifically at our 3 example markets, that aggregation is based on what was happening in individual markets, and it happened in Dublin as well. You saw this initial peak of inventory during April, and then a secondary peak in inventory, little secondary bump in October. And that really spoke to, sellers getting comfortable with, well, hey, maybe I don't need to be here. Maybe we can go someplace else. My job is allowing me to do that. The whole concept of where the kids are going to be going to school and how they're going to be going to school, it actually led to some decisions much, much later in the year. And it wasn't just a Dublin thing. It happened in Pleasanton, and it happened in Livermore as well. Now, this is just 1 year. And you can't look at this and say, well, golly, a whole bunch of more units came on the market, much more supply, a lot more choices for buyers. Yeah, not so much. Now we're going to compare 2019 with 2020, looking at Dublin specifically. And you can see that while this secondary bump in inventory during the fall was interesting, month after month after month, which is represented here 2019 on this green line, you can see that the number of choices that buyers had throughout the year significantly less in 2020. Same kind of initial peak in April, but as we get into the fall, even with that bump, we're still down, half the number of units for sale month to month. So while it was encouraging that people still wanted to buy homes, even during COVID-19, the choices simply weren't there. And that's going to resonate throughout the market. How does it resonate? Boom, it's right here. Now, when I made this presentation last year, and I was looking at my calendar, and I think that this was one of the last live presentations I made, I think last year. When I was, given the update last time, the big news was this drop in sales prices from 2018 to 2019, something that we hadn't experienced in almost a decade. And the last time we experienced that, it was because of the economic crisis brought on by the Great Recession. So coming into 2020, we were expecting price stability. We were expecting completely different market conditions. Well, we got completely different market conditions in the sense that prices didn't stabilize and they continued to increase. Now, this is an aggregation of the median sales price for single-family detached homes in the Tri-Valley. Let's look specifically at Dublin, Pleasanton, and Livermore. You can see in Pleasanton, 18 to 19 prices dropped. 18 to 19 prices drop in Dublin, and a similar trend in Livermore. But once we get into 2020, we're now setting price records, historically high price records. We never experienced a median sales price north of $1.1 million in Dublin. And this was during a global pandemic. Now, speaking of global pandemic, did COVID-19, did shelter in place have an impact on sales prices? Now, this is an unusual analysis for me to share with you because I typically avoid sharing month to month to month analysis when it comes to sales prices. I do that because a home is not like a stock. It's not like something that you buy at one point in the year and then you turn around and sell it. Now, do some clients do that? I'm sure some people may do that. But the hold time for the commodity represented by a home is on average in California closer to 10 or 11 years. So when we see this big drop in prices from February to March, that does not a trend make. That said, I still wanted to share with you, well, did shelter in place, did everything else that happened during 2020 really impact sales prices? Yeah, not so much. And what's particularly interesting is when we get into October, getting closer to the election, all the social unrest that was going on, all the doubts and anxiety that we are experiencing globally didn't resonate when it came to the confidence that people have in purchasing homes. And when I say confidence, I'm saying the ability for people to make offers, to make aggressive offers, and to drive up sales prices. So was there, some month-to-month changes in prices? Yeah. But comparing the beginning of the year with the end of the year, we were hard on the gas in terms of making very competitive offers, and it resulted in sales prices being at a historically high level. So before I get into the bedrooms and home size thing, want to take a break. I've got some delicious tap water here that I'm going to enjoy. Questions, comments? Do I need to call on people? Any questions, comments before I go on?
Let me ask you a question.
Council member, nice to see you. Congratulations. Happy New Year. Go for it.
Thank you. I do enjoy your sense of humor. It's fun. And my question is, I see the median price is like $1.3 million. I remember just a couple of days ago, I checked, it's more like a 1.1 for Dublin.
Well, it depends on, if I can use an analogy, it depends on when you're putting the thermometer in the hot tub or in the pool or whatever. So depending on whether I'm looking at an annual aggregation or a month-to-month aggregation, and it also depends on what kind of property types that you're looking at as well. So I like to use median sales price, and the time period I like to look at is nothing less than 1 month. So depending on what you were looking at, like a daily, it depends. The point when I share sales price information isn't necessarily to say this is what homes are selling for today. It's to share a larger context about where prices are going and what that tells us about the desirability of homeownership in a given community. So was it 1.1? Was it 1.3? Sure. The bottom line is, though, prices increased from 19 to 20 significantly and consistently. And the big takeaway there is, with everything that happened, during 2020, people were still willing to pay a premium for homeownership in Dublin. So hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opening softball question there, council member. that was a great question. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a quick question.
David. Council member, congratulations.
Hey, good to see you, David.
Good to be seen.
Really quickly, I assume you're going to address this. We have not only a different working environment, but we also have a lot of easing going on, and we have historical interest rates that are like nowhere we've ever really seen. And I'm just wondering if anywhere in this presentation you're going to address trends and how much those interest rates have had on the folks that say, yeah, I can still afford these houses. I can still afford it. But when those interest rates start creeping, which they're expected to do in the next couple of years, how might that impact? I'm just wondering if you have that somewhere in your discussion today. Thanks.
Yeah, short answer, yes. Long answer, it's my second to last slide. So yeah, we're gonna spend some time on that. Great question. I'm gonna cut off these questions because they're too good. All right, they're too hard hitting. We're gonna keep on going. Okay, so back to the slideshow. Let's talk a little bit about these prices, about why they were historically high, and what sets Dublin apart from other communities, not only in the Bay Area but in the East Bay, and why people will probably still continue to pay a premium for homeownership in Dublin, almost regardless of where sales prices go. it used to be location, 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 and that's still a huge factor. But now the 3-word thing I'm going to trot out is work from home. If you are working from home, you've got to have space to work from home. I did a little article for the Pleasant Weekly, it came out last week, and I mentioned the quadfecta of what homes have to do now. It's got to be fundamental shelter. It's got to be a home office. It's got to be a classroom. It's got to be a gymnasium, or maybe a vacation destination. And when you look at the size and capacity of homes, Dublin is ranked number 2 throughout the East Bay in terms of homes that sold last year. Dublin only trailed Danville in terms of how many bedrooms and how many bathrooms. So, one of the things that one of the reasons I did this analysis was I've been hearing anecdotally from agents, clients coming from San Francisco, fleeing the smaller options and literally smaller options physically that they had, particularly millennials, household formation among millennials. They're getting together, they're making kids, and they're realizing I've got to have more space to do this family thing and do this work from home thing. And that's why they have been bypassing perhaps more affordable options along the 880 corridor, because when you look at those homes, whether it's San Leandro or Alameda or even Castro Valley, the homes aren't big enough. And they don't have they don't have the amenities. They don't have what it takes to be able to comfortably work from home and school from home as well. So you add on to all the other things that make the Tri-Valley and Dublin so attractive, the fact that our stock of homes are larger. Yeah, sure, interest rates a factor, but what you're buying just worked a lot better for the work from home, school from home, vacation from home experience. So,
David, can I ask a quick question on this slide?
Council member, absolutely, go for it.
Was this slide also just existing homes, or did this one include new properties as well?
This slide is based on transactions that occurred during 2020. So if it was a new home builder that put their property on the MLS, it would be included in this aggregation. Yeah.
Thank you.
But I mean, if you're looking at land use decisions and product mix and what's going to make sense for the future, because guess what? The future is going to be doing stuff from home, bedrooms and baths. Clearly people want it. They're willing to pay a premium for it as well. Yeah. Great question. So let's talk about not only historically high sales prices, but people willing to move. And when I say move, literally willing to move. One of the measures of the health of a market and also what direction the real estate market is going to be going is how long homes are on the market. And the big news that happened in 2019 is that we saw homes sitting on the market for 30 days on average. Now, this is an aggregation for, all the transactions that occurred during the year. So that included the slower months during the winter and the faster months during the spring and fall. The big news, though, is that we're looking at almost a week longer than in 2018. And that's a big deal because it tells us if a home is sitting on the market that much longer, it tells us, well, we're going to be expecting a change. And the change typically is we're going to see prices come down so those properties start moving. And that's exactly what they did during 2019. Homes sat on the market longer, prices came down. We get into 2020, and the mind-blowing thing about this 20 days on average is that homes moved faster in 2020 than they did during 2019 in the middle of a pandemic. So it wasn't just those low interest rates. It was the fact that people had this, they needed home ownership and they needed it quickly, and they were willing to do what it took to get homes sold very quickly. Now, to look specifically at what impact shelter in place did have on the market, here's our days on market calculation for our 3 communities on a month-to-month basis. And you can absolutely see that shelter in place did have an impact on each of our markets. And what's remarkable about this period, April, May, and June, typically that's when the market would be accelerating, when more product would be coming on, more buyers coming into the market, and it was exactly the opposite. The way that I've been describing this period of mid-March up into May is the COVID timeout, and you have to use the timeout feature when you say that. So if you're going to franchise COVID timeout, make sure that you put this on there as well. I don't mean to be glib, but it was a thing. The thing, though, about a timeout is that at some point the timeout is over and the game is back on. And that is exactly what happened. And sure, Pleasanton, we saw this little spike here from August to September. But if you look at the rest of the year, as we get into the fall, coming out of the summer, when markets would traditionally be slowing down as kids go back to school, yeah, December, no surprise. Things did slow down during the holiday seasons. But for the rest of the fall, we had buyers coming into the market. We had a little bit more supply. They were ready to buy, and bam, that's exactly what they did. So I keep saying this over and over. In the middle of a global pandemic, social unrest, people absolutely had to have homeownership, and they had to have it in the Tri-Valley. So the third big observation was record-setting sales activity, and here it was. That's right. 400 more units than we did in 2019. It may not seem like a big deal, but it is a big deal. Record-setting sales activity from going back the last 5 years. And this is a big deal when you consider everything that happened in 2020. Was this driven by interest rates? Sure. Yeah, it made it possible for people to get into homeownership. But the units had to be there as well. And this reflection of 400 more units as an aggregation of the entire Tri-Valley also speaks to, people are leaving the Tri-Valley as well. That's because I'm pretty sure we didn't build, 400 single-family detached homes in the Tri-Valley. So what does that look like specifically in Dublin, Pleasanton, Livermore? Where did those 400 units come from? Well, they came from incremental increases in all of our communities. So here's 30 more units sold between 19 and 20 in Dublin. You can see about 50 more units in Livermore. Not so good at math, about 15 units in Pleasanton also. So it was all these little incremental increases in each of our communities that drove sales activity up. And the big takeaway, though, is we sold more units in the middle of a pandemic, which tells us that all the things that didn't work during 2020, homeownership certainly did work. So next, and this is one of the last things I'm going to share with you, pending sales. This is a measure of how many people are actually in the market, not just going through open houses, which is hard to do for a good reason. Okay, it's hard to go to an open house now because you got to go through all the rigmarole, which is good because it keeps everybody safe. Pendings represent how many people are actually making offers, how many homes are in the process of being sold. And the fact that we had peak pending activity in October, not only in Dublin, but in some of our other communities as well, really speaks to that whole COVID timeout thing. And once we figured out how to do real estate transactions, the buyers were there, they made legit offers, and it pushed that real estate season much, much further into the year. And one of the takeaways here is that it's really changing our conception of, when does real estate get hot during the year? Real estate gets hot when the inventory is there and when the buyers are able to do their thing. So the fact that people are, traditionally they would wait for the spring. Homeownership is in such high demand that when the inventory comes online, the buyers are going to be there. So before I get to that promised slide, questions, comments, yes, no? Do I need to pick on someone? I will do that. I'll pick on someone. No questions, no comments. Councilmember Kamagi, come on. You got anything for me?
I like the beard, and that is a really cool mic. What brand is that?
This is just it's a relative inexpensive Behringer. It's a recording mic that's been kicking around my band for a few years, and it just happens to work. So yeah. Yeah.
How's the band?
Sorry, Vice Mayor.
Oh. Yeah, and don't forget it. No, how's the band doing?
It is tough to be a musician during COVID-19.
Yeah, I bet.
We when the weather was nice, we were rehearsing in my backyard, social distance. We made some videos. Which was fun, but it ain't the same thing. We watched the Star is Born video movie, the remake, which is outstanding, and all those concert scenes. And then Bohemian Rhapsody was on TV a couple nights ago. We watched that again. It just, for a performing musician, it's really, really tough. And I can't wait to get out and play again.
David, I got a real quick one for you because I know you want to keep moving. And I'm out relatively early, so I wanted to ask this. Are you going to present any slides that show a normalized environment? And what I'm getting at is historically, real estate has gone through typical cycles, 7-year cycles, and there's all kinds of different reasons why we are where we are today and we were in 2009. And I'm just wondering, and you know where I'm going in some of these things I'm throwing at you is because we want to really know what the future is like. It's cool to see how good we've done today, but I know what the future is. So I'm just wondering, is our real estate environment ever going to revert back to a normalization? And that's something you need to answer now, but somewhere in the present.
Normal is now. And trying to normalize home sales and real estate values like you would normalize other commodities is really, really difficult because there are so many thumbs on the scale of the market. You know, supply in particular. I recorded a podcast episode with the former chief economist for the California Association of Realtors this morning. We were talking about this, is that the big difference between the supply and demand equation when it comes to real estate is that the market, if there's super high demand, the market just doesn't respond like other commodities that can spool up and spit out more widgets or whatever people are demanding. In the case of real estate, demand's been through the roof, you know, for years, and supply, for whatever reason, and this isn't a political statement, it's not a pejorative statement, it's just a statement of fact, supply just can't keep up for a variety of reasons. So, you know, in comparing, you know, is it ever going to get back to normal? That's hard to say because normal is so different than other markets, because in other markets, normal would be that balance between supply and demand. And as you know, that equation has been out of balance for such a long time that it's hard to describe what normal should be. That said, let me get to some things to watch for, and maybe that'll touch on some of those questions to ask. Back to the slideshow, and you guys are asking awesome questions. Thank you. It's the challenging questions. So just a few things to watch for during 2020. First off, number one, interest rates. This is the demand side of the equation. You know, we can talk about people that are fully employed, that have great jobs, that have great credit. It's cheap money that is enabling them to act on those demands. If we were to see interest rates, you know, shoot up a couple points, even a half a point or a single point, when you're looking at a $1 million price point, that has a direct impact on monthly mortgage payments. So it's gonna sting. So can I tell you which direction rates are going to go? No. I will tell you, though, if you're wondering, is there a single variable I should be paying attention to that's going to, you know, tip the scales in real estate? Bam, interest rates, absolute number one. Second would be foreclosure forbearance. Now, what drove prices down during the Great Recession was it was two things. It was the inventory that came on board because of short sales and foreclosures, and it was also on the demand side as well, because when we were looking at 12% unemployment in Alameda County, that wasn't just the service sectors. That was across the board. People were out of work, and it wasn't that they didn't want homeownership. The demand for homeownership was there, but they weren't able to do anything about that demand. They had that desire, but they couldn't do anything. I mention this now because we really don't know what's going to happen in terms of short sales and foreclosure and what impact that may have on Dublin. Let me just share a couple slides with you, explaining why this situation may be a little different than what we had during the Great Recession. When you look at the kinds of buyers that got into trouble, the vast majority of them had purchased homes with adjustable rate mortgages, or ARMs, and when those rates adjusted, they couldn't keep up and they lost their homes. And when we look at 2005, you know, almost half the market, people that were purchasing homes using purchase financing in 2005, almost half were ARMs. And then, you know, after the Great Recession and those products went away, we get down to 8%. We look at 2019, don't have the 2020 stats yet, and it's 15% of people are using ARMs. So the vast majority of folks that are buying homes are using a conventional fixed rate mortgage, which is much more stable. It's not going to be subject to great fluctuations that might put people into trouble. So that's point number one, is that the types of financing are much more stable today. Thing number two is that the skin in the game that people have in purchasing homes is significantly higher than what we had back 2006 that was leading into the Great Recession. You take a look at, 20% or more in 2020. It was a third of buyers versus less than a quarter in 2006, which really brought in problems. But the big deal here, the median down payment, 10% in 2020 compared with 2%, 2.5% in 2006. It's, cash buyers. We've got, more people coming in. It's not a huge percentage of the market, but the bottom line is it's much more difficult to walk away from a home or a mortgage these days because buyers during the last several years have put more of their own money into the market. So I say foreclosure forbearance, and the end of that is something to watch, but it may not necessarily be a universal thing. It may be more of an issue in markets where there are more folk in those sectors that were impacted by COVID-19. But it is one thing that we're going to watch. When is the forbearance thing going to be done? I don't know. But as with interest rates, it's just something to keep an eye on.
David, I have
thing,
another question on that last slide.
Go ahead.
Is that California wide or U.S.?
Yeah, this is information from the California Association of Realtors, and it's based on their survey of buyers, their annual survey of buyers specifically in California. Yeah, great question. Yeah. Next thing is going to be Proposition 19. This is the proposition that passed last November that allows homeowners, the 55 years and older, and others to take their current property tax bases with them anywhere in California. And what's unique about Prop 19 and the Tri-Valley is that this is a great place to live. All the services are here. You can age in place. We got the big homes with the bedrooms and the bathrooms. You can work here. And I'm sure we've all heard of people, I'm going to Idaho. I'm going to Tahoe. Ann and I had lunch outside today in February. It's a gorgeous day in the Tri-Valley. Why would you leave? So Prop 19 is interesting. It's going to generate some more inventory. People will leave because they are, want to do something different, and they're kind of tied into that Prop 13 tax basis. It works great for them. Is it going to mean a flood of inventory into Dublin? Not necessarily. I think we're going to see it in other communities where people have said, "Gosh, I really wish I could, do something different, but I love my tax basis." Yeah, now they've got the ability to do something differently. Is that going to cause prices to stabilize because of all these Prop 19 sellers out there? I don't think so, not in Dublin, but it's something to watch for. Next is working from home. And even I think, you're all business leaders, that even when COVID-19 is over and the shelter in place is lifted, we're all still probably going to be working from home in one way or another, either because we can, or because we want to, or frankly, it just makes more business sense. I know I'm a lot more productive in some ways working from home. My wife, who works a little more lab, she ain't going back. She ain't going back. And this is going to continue to put pressure on those types of properties that allow for working from home. I think I've got something on I think it's under COVID-19 fallout. But we talk about how 3 and 4 kind of work against each other a little bit because, people may be leaving Dublin because they can, but there's a lot of people that are looking directly at Dublin as, bam, that's where I want to do my work from home. Last thing is it's just COVID-19 in general and what it's going to mean and, how it's going to change our regional economy. I mean, there's out-migration stuff happening, also driven by the working from home. And there's just a lot of, if you were to tell me, 30 days after shelter in place last year, that we were going to have record-breaking sales prices, record-breaking sales volume, and lowest days on market in 5 years, I would have said, you're crazy. No, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We know what's going to happen. Well, guess what? That's exactly what happened. So we just have to keep a super open mind, and, it's failure of imagination, which leads us into, a lot of problems. Just who knows what's really going to happen? The question of interest rates, the big federal bailouts that we're talking about, just general global economics and how that might manifest itself in terms of things like interest rates. We just have to keep a super open mind about what could come out of COVID-19. That's me. I'm David Stark. I work for BayEast. I love Dublin. You guys have, it's an incredible community. I was picking up a prescription at Dublin Kaiser today and saw the construction going on for Emerald High School. And it's just such I said this earlier, such a dynamic community. And to see how the population and philosophy on things has evolved over just in the short time, 20 years I've been in the Bay Area. I just, to me, I know your phrase is, America's backyard, but, maybe you update it and say, can't wait to see what happens next, because it's just such an exciting and dynamic community. Call me, email me. Happy to share my slides as well. And thank you for your hospitality. I'm available for some questions.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for this great update. It's always enjoyable every year. Why don't we go ahead and open up the floor to questions. If you don't want to speak out loud, you're welcome to put it in the chat and I'll read it for you. So if you want to raise your hand and I can call on you. Do you know how to do that? It's under reactions on the bottom thing. You can raise your hand.
I just saw a hand gesture from Georgine. I don't know if that was a polite one. I know that it had a digit extended, so hopefully it was a polite one there.
No, it was just a thumbs up.
Oh, okay. Whew. No questions? Golly. This is what I miss about the live thing, is that we'd be chatting throughout this whole thing. So I think Patty might have a question.
Do you think or foresee that there will be any programs that will allow like more first-time buyers, so they are more people are able to buy a home? Right now, it's really hard for people. I don't want to see what happened back in 2005, but yet we want people to have the opportunity to be able to buy.
So that Patty, that's a great question, and there are first-time buyers in the market now. If you're asking specifically, are there programs for, say, moderate to lower income first-time homebuyers? Those programs are out there as well. There's some state financing programs that have been available for years. As far as local program, that's tougher, because most of the local funding that y'all have has got strings tied to it. That's directly for more lower income folk, where it's difficult to make homeownership pencil. Other states have done statewide first-time homebuyer programs, some specific tax credits and things like that allow people to get in. So yeah, possibly. If I will tell you this, and my primary job for BayEast is running, political operations. If you want to see those kinds of programs, you got to talk to your elected officials. If you want to see the government involved in the homeownership space, it starts with the voters. So that's now, as far as what happened in 2005. I don't see that happen, because those kinds of products just aren't available anymore. The pendulum swung way to the other side.
Right.
You've got to be alive. You've got to have a job. You've got to have credit. Yeah.
Yep.
I know that I'm sounding glib.
I want to ask a part B to that, because
okay, part B, go ahead.
Some counties or school districts are making home ownership more available to teachers, so that they attract really good teachers into their area. Have you heard of anything like that? Or maybe it already exists and I just haven't heard of it?
In Dublin specifically, I would, in the Tri-Valley, yeah, not specifically for teachers that I'm aware of. Everybody say hello to my wife, Ann. Today she's on the 2:00 coffee delivery. That alternates between me and her if I happen to be on a presentation. So anyway, so thanks, Ann. Like I need more coffee. Patty, I'm sorry. Short answer to your question. I'm not aware of anything in the Tri-Valley specifically for teachers. But again, that's another thing where if you want to see something like that, talk to your electeds.
Good.
Hey, I'm jumping in. Sorry, but Pleasanton has a first-time home buyer down payment assistance program, and they just expanded it to city council to teachers.
Good.
So I don't know, maybe our Dublin team, I know we might have enough members on here. They can't talk about it because there's Brown Act stuff, but I know we just went over that this morning and put it in the chat. It's their DPA program to include teachers for first-time home purchase in the city.
Yeah, I think they put, Assemblymember Baker, good to see you. Good to see you. It's just a caveat about that. I think they put about $300,000 into that program, and the reality is, money's not going to go that far. So
yeah, they had it at
another way to
$20,000, and then they expanded it to $100,000, which would be 3 people.
Right.
But
yeah, so yeah, and BayEast used to really promote those programs back when redevelopment existed, which was funding a lot of those programs, and you know, this is where it really takes a village to get things happening, because those programs look great on paper, and then you realize, yeah,
Right.
3.
Somebody has to pay
So
for it.
it's not just the financing programs, it's the supply side as well. You know,
Right.
that's what's really going to move the needle, is if they have more choices.
I'm
And
gonna
I just
put
wanted
my-
to,
Next question.
I'm going to put my school district hat on for just a second. So ignore the fact that my background says city council member, but I am an employee of the Dublin schools, and I know that there has been a Dublin school employee program. I don't know the details because as a homeowner, I ignored that email when it came through my school district account. So I know there is a program, or there at least has been in the last within the last 2 years. So Dublin Unified has done something along those lines, but I don't know the details. So if anybody's interested, we could certainly find out. But I know there has at least been a program in the past.
I will share this, Councilmember Josie, and leave your school district hat on for a second. If we really wanted to move the needle on teacher home ownership, we would figure out a way to it's financial literacy as well. The difference between buying a home and buying anything else is that it's a process. I mean, you and I could go to any dealership in Dublin today, see what I did there, and buy, you know, a lovely car. You know, it's pretty easy. But purchasing a home is a completely different experience because it is life-changing. And when I say life-changing, it's not just changing where you wake up every day and go to bed every night. It's your spending habits. It's your credit history. So if we want to help get teachers into homes, we got to teach teachers, you know, how to get their financial house in order, pun intended, to make that possible. It's not just, you know, throwing money at them, but it's saying, hey, you want to become a homeowner? Here's what you need to do for the next 6 months to get your credit set up, to maybe look at some of these other funding programs. So that could also be a partnership possibility as well. And it seems ironic, you know, teaching financial literacy to teachers, but it might be something we could look at doing. That wouldn't necessarily be tossing money at them, but just, you know, educating folk on how to get the most out of their money and get that process going so that homeownership is eventually feasible.
and David, this is Hazel. I just wanted to chime in and say that the city of Dublin does have a first-time home buyer loan program, and Alameda County also has what they call the Alameda County Boost, which is for first responders and educators.
Yeah, and that came through and thank you, Hazel. It's good to see you. The A1 bond that we passed a few years ago. Those programs are competitive. It's not easy to get that money, but I'm sure Hazel and her team can probably help anyone through that process, or at least show them where to get started on that.
David, there's a question.
Are we done?
No, there's
Am I all
one
worn
question
out?
in the chat. Philip Tucker wants to know any information on the medium age of home buyers in Dublin.
Short answer, no. You may be familiar with the Fair Housing Act. We track a lot of things about real estate through the MLS, but demographic things like that we don't really track. Now, the California Association of Realtors, they do a survey, as I mentioned earlier. It's primarily statewide. They can drill down a little bit. What you may want to do though is you could work with the city, the American Fact Finder, or whatever they call the census. There may be some census data on that, but we purposely try to stay away from any kind of demographic analysis like that because, you know, we try to look, you know, anyone and everyone should consider home ownership. But I would start with the census to see if they've got some resources regarding age.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, I got a couple of quick questions, but I just want to share the love with everybody else. So if nobody else.
Wait, I'm learning that quick question means different things to different people. Okay, bring it on, Councilmember. What do you got?
I think you defined our environment really well and the trends and all that. But I'd like to see if I could put you on the spot. You said I've defined the trend. I've defined what occurred and for the residential market. And so if I were to say, do you have a crystal ball over the next 2 to 3 years, or where's your brain on that? That would be the first one. Then the other one is kind of a, yeah, I didn't quite know that if this was going to be all about residential real estate or everything just real estate trends, and perhaps there's a follow-up or something down the line, or where we can get some information on trends in commercial industrial.
Okay, so
that'd be easy.
Yeah. Thank you for that softball. You talk to any economist or would-be economist these days, and they're going to tell you that their crystal balls are either on vacation or they're cloudy. And that's why my last bullet point on issues to watch was COVID-19 fallout, because it really complicates things. I'm going to take the last part of your question first, the commercial thing. BayEast has an affiliation with the Commercial Brokers Association, and I'd be happy to connect you with them. They really are two completely different animals, particularly during COVID-19. I mean, you want to talk about sectors of that business have just been absolutely decimated. So I would want to refer you to folk that are looking specifically at commercial. 3 to 5 years. The way I look at it is what can't change, okay? Which is kind of a ridiculous statement, but what is it about when you look at the calculus of supply and demand? What do we know is going to continue? And yeah, so on the demand side, do we have people that want to live in the Bay Area? Yeah, people want to live in the Bay Area for a variety of reasons, and many of those reasons aren't going to change. Weather, fantastic. Yeah, I understand global warming and all that stuff, but we have fantastic weather. Cultural diversity, and more importantly, a community that welcomes everybody. That's pretty darn unique, especially considering what happened last year. People from all over the planet want to live in the San Francisco Bay Area because they can, because they're welcomed. That probably ain't going to change, thank goodness. Next, you look at the critical mass of whether it's education or tech. Is Cal Berkeley going to close? Is Stanford going to close? Or are these big universities going to close? And are we going to see a brain drain out of the San Francisco Bay Area? Maybe with distance learning, maybe. Then you look at the other, big critical mass things: Apple, Google, Facebook's, Tesla. Yeah, big deal. It's a big deal. Elon leaving to wherever. But are we going to see this flight out of California by the tech sector? My point is there are a lot of dominoes that would have to fall to make people not want to live in the San Francisco Bay Area. So to me, 3 to 5 years, yeah, people are still going to want to live here. The demand is still going to be high. Then you look at the supply side of things. Do we really think in the next 3 to 5 years that we're going to be able to catch up with a decade's worth of jobs, housing imbalance? I'll give you the long answer to that. No. We have a structural imbalance between jobs and housing that ain't going to be fixed in 3 to 5 years. So, do we really see that? Yeah. Is there going to be some infill? Sure. But are we going to see a complete change in our attitudes towards residential development change in the next 3 to 5 years? Doubtful. Are we going to see CEQA change? Doubtful. Are we going to see all these things that put a restriction on the supply? Doubtful. So, could we experience price stability like we did in 2019? Absolutely. Interest rates could drive that. But is homeownership still going to be expensive in Dublin in the next 3 to 5 years? Yeah, because it's still going to be desirable. So that's about as far as I want to go on my crystal ball on that one.
Awesome. Do we have any more questions?
I had a question, Inga, and maybe, I'm sorry, I kind of hopped on a little bit late, so I apologize if I missed it. But David, are you guys seeing any trends in terms of evictions? Because I know that the eviction moratorium has put a lot of strain, particularly on small homeowners who maybe have 1 or 2 properties, and they might be depending on that rental income to meet their mortgage. Are we seeing an increase in potential foreclosure once we get out of these moratoriums? I'm really worried about this kind of eviction cliff we're looking at.
That's an outstanding question. And in terms of eviction trends, yeah, there's a big trend. There aren't any evictions happening. they're not happening because
Right.
of the multi layers of moratorium. What I'm hearing anecdotally, Vice Mayor, is that, and you absolutely identified it. And the analogy I'll draw is when you look at the rental housing industry, it's very similar to the tech sector, where you've got Google, Facebook, Yahoo, whatever, the big corporate ones that you slap a regulation on them, they're going to keep on rocking. And then you've got the 17-year-old kid who's at home with the laptop developing the next killer app. Okay. And if you put the same kind of regulations on the 17-year-old home, they're going to be out of business. And it's very similar in the rental housing sector as well. When you've got the mom and pops, you've got, someone who maybe owns a condo in Dublin who's been renting it to the same tenant for the last 7 years, doesn't raise the rent. They're providing affordable below market rate housing, even though they may not have, a deed restriction that, traditional affordable housing would be. Yeah. I'm hearing more and more that we're getting to a tipping point where these mom and pops just simply either can't afford or they just can't put up with the layers of red tape and restrictions on being a rental housing provider.
Yeah.
And the tipping point's going to come when it's possible for them to sell. They're probably going to sell. And the remarkable thing about that is I've been in housing policy now for, 25 years. And the conventional wisdom for years was you never sell a rental. I shared that with one of our members who does property management a couple of years ago when we were first starting to see these rental restrictions come on. And she said, not so much. I mean, if you're a big corporate rental property owner, that's your portfolio. But if you own a single or two units, you sell because it's just not worth it. And I'm sorry to say that, shouldn't providing housing be worth it? Yeah, it should be. But unfortunately, for smaller property owners, they still have to pay the bills. They still have to maintain the unit. And at some point, there's a tip where it's just not worth it to them to be in that business. And here's what's going to happen. You got a rental condo today, it goes on the market, an investor's not going to buy it. It's going to be purchased by an owner occupant. And so you've effectively shrunk the supply of rental housing.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for saying about, I think industry in general is just screaming for more housing inventory in our region. And it's, certainly affordable housing is a part of it, but more inventory is needed if we're going to maintain that jobs housing balance here in the Tri-Valley. So thanks for bringing that up.
Well, thank you very much. Barring any more questions, I neglected to introduce everybody when we started because I just jumped right in. So would it be easier for everybody to just go around and introduce themselves at this point, or should we just highlight everybody wave on the Dublin City Council? We have Vice Mayor Sean Kumagai and Councilwoman Jean Josie, and we have Councilman Michael McCorson and Miss Sherry Hugh. She had to jump off. She had somewhere to go. We have the Honorable Catherine Baker, who's now on the FPPC. We have Georgine Bonheater with Dublin Ceremony Services District. And who am I missing? I'm looking at a bunch of faces. I think, Mr. Tucker, are you with Swalwell's office?
Yeah, Congressman Swalwell's office.
There we go. Very good. And I have to introduce someone very special to me because we just hired my new assistant. Yay! We're going to be the dynamic duo in Dublin, and that's Ashley Strasberg. She's right there. I don't know where she is on your screen. And we're thrilled to have her. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. So anyway, any more questions for Mr. Stark?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My dad's not on this presentation, so he's not going to be able to answer.
Sorry.
Very much appreciated your presentation, David. Thank you.
Oh,
I just want to say the same. David, you've done this every year for the chamber, and I always look forward to our February presentation to hear what's going on. So thanks again, and thanks for getting us all set up, Inga, and welcome on board, Ashley.
Yep, and also we have a new director for the Dublin Chamber of Commerce, and that is Sue Stevenson. She's with Dublin Ceremony Services District. we're thrilled to have her as a director. So,
don't you have enough to do, Sue? Can I give you some more work?
Busy people always take on more, right?
So anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming today. Thank you, David, for your wonderful presentation, as always, especially as a licensed real estate agent, not a realtor because I'm not active. But I've had my license since 1988. So he's the best.
Thank you for the opportunity to share. Stay safe, y'all.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Have a good evening or afternoon.